Okay, thanks everyone for being here. As I said before, please do say hello, tell us where you're dialing in from, and thank you for joining us today. Whether it's the morning, afternoon, evening, where you're dialing in from, we're really grateful that you found the time in your busy lives to join us for today's Leadership Insight session. And this is the second one of this series. For those of you that I've not had a chance to say hello to as yet from across our broad community across the whole of the world. My name's Gemma. I'm the Programme Director of Nursing Now Challenge. And I'm really, really pleased to welcome and introduce our speakers for today's session, Jess and Becky, who will give you their formal introduction as nurse leaders working across the safety, the advocacy and the quality areas of nursing leadership. But what they're here to talk to you today is very much around their approach, a very conscious approach to developing the external profile that they both hold as nurse leaders. The professional brand that they have been able to develop across various different social media platforms and the approach that they have taken to do that. For both of them, that profile is significant. That following has been growing over a number of years, and it has led to a significant number of opportunities to influence. So both Jess and Becky have been engaged in real critical debates affecting the profession. They've been able to share their views, their perspectives, and contribute, more importantly, I think, to a broader narrative around nursing as a profession, and that being often a much more positive narrative than we hear from other angles, as well as a critical and discursive one. So today's session very much builds on the last session we had in this programme, which was very much around focused on leading from where you are now. And this is another example of how you are able to do that. So really understanding the influence that you can hold from this position and the platform that social media gives you to do that. I think really something else that I wanted to mention to you today is thinking about yourselves as advocates and ambassadors for the nursing profession, but also the Nursing Now Challenge as well. So when you're thinking about how you might start to frame this external profile and that professional brand, how you might use that as an opportunity to have that advocacy and ambassadorial role. So that's enough from me as an introduction to the why we're here and the reason why Becky and Jess are exactly the right people to take us through this content and this session today. I'm going to sit back and listen and absorb and learn a lot, I'm sure, from both of them. So over to you, Becky, Jess.
Thanks, Gemma. Wonderful introduction as always makes me think about, actually, is she talking about me or is she talking about somebody else? So I guess from the outset, even when we talk you through our work today and what we've been doing and sharing some of that insight with you, there's still always that, like, a little bit of imposter syndrome. There's always something that might be kind of holding you back from using your professional voice. I'm going to hand you across to Jess first so she can introduce herself. That's a magician's sleight of hand in terms of me sharing the slides while Jess is introducing herself. So, Jess, did you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Thank you, Becky, and thank you, Gemma, and everyone at Nursing Now for having us. It feels really, well, kind of full circle actually to be here because so my name's Jess. I am an adult and mental health nurse based in the UK, and I was very involved with the Nursing Now Challenge when I was, transitioning from a student to a newly registered nurse. But that was nearly 6 years ago now. So I joined the register during COVID. So that was a fun time to be a healthcare professional for all of us, I guess. But very kind of round up of me and who I am and what I'm about is I am a very passionate nurse, activist, and advocate. But I've done a lot of my work via social media and sharing and kind of influencing in that way. So later on in this session, I will be sharing with you my top tips, my A to E of social media. But yeah, I'm currently supporting students, actually physiotherapy students now. So I've gone over into what we like to call AHP land, which is different but lovely. But it's so nice to be here doing this session for you with Becky. But that's a little bit about me. Becky, what about you? Who are you?
Very loaded question for a Monday morning. But I guess essentially, what you'll soon find out is, so my name's Becky Thomas. I'm a registered nurse of almost 30 years. I know I don't look old enough, but yes, I've been doing this thing called nursing for a long, long time now. And actually in 2023, I'd had enough and I actually left the NHS, spent some time with the Florence Nightingale Foundation for 2 years doing some leadership stuff, but I've actually gone back to the NHS because I felt reinvigorated, ready to take on a different challenge, and I felt like I'd had the opportunity to work on who I was and my voice and everything that we're going to share with you today. I've taken back with me into the NHS, and boy, has that made such a big difference in terms of how I'm showing up in some of those conversations in the NHS where I'm very different. I always describe myself as an old Becky and a new Becky. But what you'll also discover as we go through today is I've been working on a professional brand for myself. So I'm also known as Curious Bex. And the reason I'm known as Curious Bex is because I've built my brand on one of my core values, which is around curiosity. So a little bit more about that as we progress through our presentation today. But yeah, like Jess, I found lots of different avenues for using my professional voice. Not quite the activist Jess is. She always inspires me, though, in terms of always being willing to put herself at the forefront of and always engaging others in the right conversations. A great convener. So I've learned a lot from Jess. Hopefully she's learned some stuff from me as well. So hopefully you'll learn stuff from both of us today around how we've kind of stepped into this space. And I guess one of the other things is yes, I am, what they might call a late career nurse, I guess. I'm actually 40/12 on Thursday this week. So for those of you maybe a little bit slower with your maths, I'm 52 on Thursday. And so social media was a place of like, well, I'm not really sure. But again, I've kind of embraced that. So I'm going to stop babbling on about myself, and I'm going to get us started with our presentation today. So hopefully you can see the screen and you can see the slides. Fantastic. I was having a little bit of a senior moment this morning when I was trying to share the slides, so hopefully we're all good now. So we've split it into three parts. And that this is intentional. So the first part is we're going to look at this idea around branding, and I'm going to hand over to the lovely Jess, and she's going to share a fantastic framework that she developed around how we use how you can start to use your professional voice, particularly in relation to social media. And then we're going to close down the session looking at how we can I've tried to pull a framework together, or some principles, some anchoring principles around how you use your professional voice in practice. There's so much more that we can share with you. We have a limited amount of time with you today, so we would encourage you to reach out to us beyond today if you wanted to know any more. So we've tried to distill it down into the time that we have. So let's get going. So essentially, for me, your professional brand is how you will communicate your expertise, your values. So I don't know if you've done any work around your values or understanding your values. Brené Brown is a great place to go and have a look at some of that kind of work. And I'm sure that as a part of this Leadership Insights program, that'll be something that will come to the forefront of your self-awareness journey as well. And then this idea around your identity in your field. So my identity is very much in, what I failed to say was that I'm actually back in the NHS working in a quality patient safety role because my passion is psychological safety and how we really need to build that, and it's the cornerstone for everything we do. And so as nurses, do we have midwives on the call as well? Because I'm very cognizant I'm in a families and therapies. Yeah. So as nurses and midwives, you've got a really great opportunity here, a very unique opportunity actually to make a positive impact on the lives of your patients and your colleagues, and not just in your day-to-day work, but in the broader arena that social media, some of the work that Jess has been doing around activism and advocacy and that kind of stuff. But you need to understand yourself in terms of how, what is your unique selling point? Who are you at the core of being? So being a nurse or a midwife is a part of your identity, but how you show up in that role is another part of that identity. It's like I've already talked about a value of curiosity. And this really is where your kind of personal, professional branding comes in. It's around how you communicate in a consistent and authentic way the image of yourself that reflects your professional identity and your goals, and those hills you're willing to die on, those ditches you're willing to jump into. Like, what is it that really drives you and really motivates you? And we will be talking about that. And Jess has got an exercise for you to help with that as well. So the first thing around professional brand is defining your unique nursing/midwifery brand, which should include this idea of your values, your mission. What is it overall? Often when I ask nurses and midwives, why they're in their jobs, they'll always say, oh, for the patients. I'm like, yeah.
You're on mute, Becky.
Did I mute myself? Everybody's in it for the patients. Believe it or not, I am quite a seasoned facilitator, but there you go. Everybody's in it for the patients, but actually, what is at the core, that drives you to do the work that you do? And actually, what sets you apart, one of the reasons I talk about this is because before I left the NHS, I felt that what set me apart was the very thing that people weren't able to embrace me for. And I really struggled and I had a hard time around that. So helping me to focusing on what my professional brand was really helped me to pull me through that and really got me into a place where I'm now able to use my professional voice in a way that adds value to the work that I do. So, and I am consistently reflecting on what that brand is, my actions, my decisions, my interactions. And when you're thinking about your brand or your identity, then it should really resonate with, who is it that you're talking to? Who is it that you're speaking to? Who is your target audience when you are leaning into your professional voice? Now, that could be advocacy around your patients. It could be advocacy around your profession. It could be that you're trying to bring a different perspective to your superiors, and we'll talk a little bit about hierarchy a little bit later on. So what I've tried to do is I've pulled together like a 6-step kind of process around understanding your brand and how you might build your brand. And the first step in this process is about clarifying your vision or your mission as a nurse or a midwife. And I've stolen this from a chap called Simon Sinek. You might or might not have heard of him. He is a contemporary thought leader. He is he's very popular. He's very prominent in the leadership space. And he's got a TED talk about the golden circle, and he talks about we need to ask this simple question around why. And he talks about the golden circle in that we're very good at communicating what we do and how we do it. But what we often struggle with is articulating why. Why do we do it? So it's really important for you to try and understand what is your purpose, what is your passion, and what is motivating you to do the work that you do. So I've already talked about my passion and motivation is very much around psychological safety and building and maintaining and understanding what safety culture in particular looks like in healthcare. And I do that through my values of curiosity and fairness. So that's how I link those things in terms of my professional brand. The next step really is about how you are going to showcase your expertise and your achievements. So this isn't just about highlighting any educational achievements and certificates and awards, but it's also about pushing forward publications, your own thought leadership around how you might see things differently, getting yourself in the right spaces like today to be able to share your thought leadership around certain things. So using various platforms, which leads into Jess's section in just a little bit. And you can also join professional networks. The Nursing Now Challenge is a great example as well of how you can showcase your expertise and achievements, demonstrate your value in that space, build your credibility. That, like, your credibility won't just come naturally, it will come through consistency, it will come through being authentic, it will come through being able to articulate who you are, what you stand for, and where your purpose is. That is a part of the whole part of your branding. So when people think about myself or Jess, they know exactly what we stand for. That's, you know, Gemma outlined that when she was introducing us today. People will come to me. I've been asked recently to talk at a conference in Hull, and the reason they've asked me to talk is because they're doing something on psychological safety. So they want me there. They want me there with because of the way I bring that to the table and the way that I share my thinking around that. The third step is about developing your voice and style. So your voice and style is, I'm not an academic, Gemma knows that. Gemma's been working on a big project with me recently, and she knows that I'm not an academic. I don't write in an academic way. I write in a very different way. I'm more of a blogger, I guess, but one of the things that I do, and my voice has come through in podcasting. So I have my own podcast. I have two podcasts actually. I have one where I sit and I chat with other people about leadership stuff, and I have one actually where I just share my curiosities for that week. So my speaking is very authentic, it's very human, it's very, I'm not afraid to talk about me and how I see things. And so that took me a little bit of time, though, to get to that point in terms of understanding what that looks like. So finding your unique tone, your language, you know, how you want to express yourself, your personality and your brand can be is really, really important, because again, it leans into you being authentically you. And then it's about aligning your actions and values as a nurse. I think I've already talked about that enough in terms of my own values, but there is a great values exercise from Brené Brown that we can signpost you to, that I would absolutely encourage people to do, because it really helped me to identify two, because Brené will argue that actually there's only probably two core values that are the things that you keep coming back to, and everything else kind of aligns to those two values. So by aligning my actions to being curious, it means that whenever I step into and I want to create a space of safety for people to be themselves, etc., I do that through curiosity, through a genuine curiosity to understand others, to understand difference, to embrace difference, all those kinds of things. And then the other one is around fairness, and those two things really align with my overall kind of my overall purpose around creating better cultures, particularly in healthcare. And so by doing this, I think I've been better able to build trust with people. I've definitely built a reputation around it. And I do definitely think that people, I have a level of credibility in that space now as well. Although I still cringe a little bit sometimes when people refer to me as an expert, because I don't see myself as an expert. Again, always lean into those growth and learning opportunities. I used to hide away from them because I thought I wasn't good enough for them. I undertook a Florence Nightingale Foundation scholarship, but for many years I said, oh no, that's not really me. And the truth of the matter was I didn't think I was good enough for something like that. But it turns out that the Florence Nightingale scholarship was one of the best things I have ever done in my professional career. So if I hadn't leaned into that, I don't know that I would be sat here talking to you now about some of this stuff, because that for me was a catalyst. It was a starting point. So hopefully this Nursing Now Leadership Insight program for you could be that catalyst in the same way for you, getting you to that point. And so by seeking those learning opportunities, again, you're showing your commitment and your passion, and it just helps you to build that credibility. And the final step really is to evaluate and keep going back to to your professional and your personal brand. You know, where are your strengths? Where are the opportunities? I need to change that word weaknesses. Where are the opportunities? Where are the opportunities for improvement? And again, just always not reinventing yourself, but always making sure that you're still in line with those values, etc. So I'm going to hand you over to Jess now, because Jess has got a bit of a challenge for you.
Thank you. So before we get any further into the session, you will see this slide again. But for those of you who are joining us live today, you might want to take a quick picture or just note down. I will also pop in the chat what we're asking you to do. But I'd like to introduce this task that we'll come back to. So on the slide, you will see a question. Why are you here? And more specifically, what we would like you to do is to think of a moment when you started to realize that this is who I am professionally, or this is where I belong within the profession. Or you might even want to be more specific, like this is why I'm here in regards to the Nursing Now challenge. You don't have to, it's completely up to you. So it might be something really super significant, or it might be something quite, without want of a better word, quite small. So that could be a patient interaction. It could be a conversation that you had with someone. It could be a moment in practice, or it could be something that just came to you when you were reflecting on your professional life, where you want to go. So you don't need to share anything right now, because as I've said, we will come back to this. And also it's super, super duper important that it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfect answer. It doesn't have to be what you think people want to hear. This is your why. So just start to hold that in your mind as we go through the session. I think, Becky, you've got one more slide before it's over to me, because as I said, we'll come back to it later. And for those of you who are watching this in the future at some point, please do try and engage with this as well, because we'll use the Nursing Now hashtags, which I think it's Leadership Insights Programme, something like that. But we'll say what it is later as well. And me and Becky will take a look out on social medias to see your posts too. So, yeah. Becky, back to you for a sec.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. Thanks, Jess. Absolutely. This is a great starting point, really, from the perspective of building your professional brand. But your professional brand leans into your professional voice, and we'll talk about that in more detail as we go through this morning. I guess really just to finish off around professional brand, and if you did want any further support or help, do engage with Jess and I outside of this. We'd be happy to provide some clear kind of questions or some format for you to help you think about your professional brand. But in terms of some of the benefits that I've realized, I think, as a result of having a strong, solid brand, is that I feel like my voice is more heard now, definitely, than it ever has been before, which means I've been able to add different perspectives in rooms with even the highest of paid people. And we'll talk about hierarchies a little bit later on. I feel like I've served as an example for my profession. It's really interesting more recently, since I've been back in the NHS. I've had some emails from people who've talked about my reputation before, which I'd never heard before. And now I've got people telling me that they've always admired my approach. They've been inspired by me. What that actually made me realize is that even when you think somebody's really got it together and they know what they're doing, they still need feedback. They still need to know that they might be impacting on you, in a positive way, because we all have those moments of doubts. But yeah, being able to serve as an example for my profession is just incredible. You can become a leader in your field, and I think I've already alluded to the fact that I am seen now as a leader in that field, which feels a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, because I'm not always sure that I am the right person, but I have a good talking to myself. So imposter syndrome is real for lots of us. But I feel like I'm able to share that knowledge now, share my opinions and my views around these different things to the point where I've written blogs, I've written chapters in books, and probably even more excitingly, recently have written a whole book with the lovely Gemma around curiosities. So, you know, that will be coming out in next year. So it's just, I can't believe the opportunities I've had as a result of doing this work. Networking opportunities, I can't underestimate the impact of a network, and like the Nursing Now network, I've heard such great things from Jess in particular about being engaged in this stuff, and I see lots of positive stuff as well all over LinkedIn and things like that. Lean into those networking opportunities, because boy, you know, I grew up as a nurse in Wales, and I was very insular in my experience in Wales, and it wasn't until I stepped out of that and stepped into different networks, it just blew my professional world wide open in the best way possible. And I've met some of the best people who have given me the best opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And you can use it for your nursing business. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a logo on these slides, and that logo is reflective of a business I've recently launched. So there is so much stuff that you can do off the back of having a good, solid, professional brand. And so with that, I'm going to hand you over to the lovely Jess now, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we can lean into using social media once we know what our brand is.
Thank you, Becky. So this will be a bit of a whistle-stop tour of a framework that I've developed over the years called the A to E of SoMe, so of social media. So if we go to the next slide, please, Becky. I'm going to do the whole next slide thing. But this is a practical, I hope it's practical framework that's designed to help you amplify your own professional voice, but all while staying true to your core values. So this isn't about you becoming the next nursing or midwifery influencer. This is about you showing up as yourself online professionally. And as I said, this is meant to be some really kind of practical, like high level top tips that have helped me and others throughout the years, build and maintain our professional voice, and also enabling it to develop over time as well. So, you know, what you share and how you show up online right now will be completely different to how you share and show up online in years to come, and that is completely okay. So if we go to the next slide, please. Before we get going, for those of you who are here today, I wonder, either in the chat or if you wanted to come on camera and share as well, really keen to hear from you in regards to your preferences when it comes to social media platforms. So do you have a preferred social media platform? Is there a platform that you may avoid using while identifying as a healthcare professional? And is there, or are there, sorry, any platforms that you're a bit curious about, but you know, you're just a bit unsure at the moment and you're keen to explore more? So I wonder whether anyone has any reflections while we're waiting for that from the people who are here today. Becky, what's your preferred platform?
Ooh. So I did used to like Twitter. It's gone. I don't go anywhere near that anymore. So I think probably my preferred, from a professional perspective, is LinkedIn. But I need, and I'm also leaning into trying to get down with the kids with Instagram.
Nice, down with the kids. Great, thank you. So Catherine, what's your either preferred platform, one that you avoid, or one that you're a bit curious about?
Yes, thank you. So my preferred platform has been Facebook.
Yep.
Yes, and it's been pretty engaging for me. I've got a lot of classmates, you know, from primary school, JHS, senior high school, the university. I found that Facebook came first before the other platforms, and so I found it more engaging, and so I've been using Facebook a lot. And then
Yeah.
the one that I'm curious about is LinkedIn.
Is that LinkedIn? I think I've lost your audio.
I think it probably was LinkedIn, wasn't
I
it?
think it
Sorry,
was LinkedIn.
there's some
That's okay.
interruption with my network.
No
Yes, sorry about
problems.
that. Yes,
That's
so
okay.
I'm very curious about LinkedIn. I haven't been on for long, but I've been seeing, people's posts, and I think that it's good professionally. And so I've been trying to, get myself involved, but I hardly know much about it. So I just follow and try to, engage others on their posts. But personally, I don't post much, but I, comment on others.
I lost your audio again. But what I'm getting from that is oh, you're curious about LinkedIn, but you're more kind of commenting and engaging in others' posts and not posting as much yourself. Well, hopefully after today, you might wish to post, but we shall see. So, Catherine,
Yeah,
thank you so much. I
thank
am
you
going to move
too.
us on. I'm going to move us on to Julie. So, Julie, how about you?
Yeah, thank you. I've been on Facebook sort of personally for a long time, so I'm very, very comfortable on Facebook. I've used Instagram a little bit to try and engage with new nurses, but I don't particularly enjoy it, if I'm really, really honest. And I've only recently, although I've been registered on LinkedIn for a number of years, I've only recently, literally as of last week or so, started to use it, and it does feel like a really helpful platform. And I think, and I'm sharing this because it might be relevant for other people as well. I think while I was still working, because I've retired now, sort of, I felt a little bit nervous about being on LinkedIn when there were work people around me, and I felt like I needed to be more cautious about what I was saying. Whereas I've just noticed in this last week, I'm sharing things that I share in front of people, but I wouldn't normally share online. So it's just a bit of an interesting
Yeah.
reflection, really. And then the one I'm curious about, because people, like the people I work with, keep telling me I need to go onto TikTok, and we're there. I've posted 3 or 4 times, but that's a learning curve.
Well done, Julie.
Absolutely. And yeah, I've definitely seen a difference in LinkedIn. I mean, when I first started using it, it was before I was even in nursing. So I used it when I was a human resources professional. And now it's definitely evolved, particularly in the healthcare space. So yeah, that's really, really good to hear. Thank you, Julie. And Andre, how about you?
Hi. Well, hello all. I'm I have never had like any personal social media platform like Instagram, Facebook, or wherever. Like
Yeah.
not anything personal. But since I started practicing nursing, so since I started the nursing degree, and when I started to be interested in research, I started to use LinkedIn. And I think it's a very good platform for me because it's very serious. So the things that you post there, or the things or the feedback that you find there, is a serious platform, is a serious content. So you really find very helpful material. So you don't get like any distraction that you would find on Instagram, TikTok, or etc. So that's what I like from that it really
Yeah.
helps you to find very good opportunities, to see what's happening in the real world at a high level, etc. And I also like LinkedIn because you can share long content, so you can share
Yes.
long messages, etc. So, for example, I used to have Twitter or X, but the problem with X is that although you pay, I mean, if you pay, you can write like longer messages, but if you don't
Mm.
pay, you can only write like small pieces. So for the work that I do and the reflections that I post, etc., it's not so helpful. And as far as I'm seeing now is that the best opportunities that I have found are on LinkedIn. But as I know that most of the teenagers, students, and young people are on Instagram and TikTok, and as I am kind of developing my personal brand on health policy, healthcare management, everything related with those kind of things like leadership, etc. And Gemma know that because I am also part of the nursing now. I would like to go to Instagram only or TikTok because there's a big gap there, and not I think that no one from my country is filling that gap, or
Yeah.
I don't know, like a lot of people. There are people in LinkedIn doing that, but not on those other platforms. So I think as I am young, etc., I could do it, but I don't know how to do it. So I'm not like so. I don't know. I'm not really sure about how should I do it, because I don't want to have this first process of being a novel, like an
Yeah.
I'm not. I want to be an expert directly to Instagram, as I feel now on LinkedIn, but I don't know how to use, or which formula should I use to attract those people to talk about leadership, research, etc. So maybe we can have a conversation someday about it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think also what you're saying there is there are multiple platforms that we can have a presence on and influence as healthcare professionals as well. And people are showing up in these different spaces now. And I'm hoping that over the next 10 minutes or so while I go through this A2E with you, I'm not talking about a specific platform as such. It's more kind of the principles that you can take with you no matter which platform it is that you are using. And yeah, Andre, it'd be great to, I know we're connected on LinkedIn, but if we want to talk about Instagram another time, would love to go through that with you. So this slide now, I'm not going to open the floor just because I want to get to the A to E, but perhaps when you're, doing some reflection on our session, you might want to think about your experiences so far with social media. So I've put it into the good, the bad, and the ugly. So can you think of an example of a social media success story? It doesn't have to be yours, it could be somebody else's. The bad, so any examples of where social media didn't go quite as planned. And then the ugly, I've only ever had a few of these shared with me in these sessions in the past, but any examples where the use of social media went completely, totally wrong and you never want to use it ever again. And usually that's the kind of people that I'll connect with afterwards and kind of help them through coming back to social media. But yeah, you might want to have a quick think about that at some point. For those of us who are joined live, or if you're watching on catch up as well, do have a think about those experiences that you might have had so far. But if we could go to the next slide, please. So we're going to now go through the A to E of social media. So this is authenticity, biography, content, your digital footprint, and engage or engagement, essentially. So if we go to authenticity first, please, next slide. So the first pillar of the A to E is all about authenticity. And as we've touched on previously, authenticity online means showing up as yourself, honestly and consistently. So I'm not going to tell you to have like a pre-planned social media plan for the next 3 months or anything like that. It's just about thinking about when you do show up and post online that you're actually being true to yourself and your values. And it's about building genuine connections with your audience, with the community, with your colleagues and your wider professional networks by being real and relatable. So this isn't about trying to be the next influencer or kind of copying someone else's content. It's about being yourself. And to effectively achieve that authenticity, firstly, what we're encouraging you to do, which you may have gotten onto, is to tell your authentic story, so your why. People resonate really deeply with true experiences, triumphs, and even struggles. And by sharing openly, this can foster trust and deepen engagement with the people on your platforms. And it doesn't matter which platform it's on. It could be on TikTok, it could be on Instagram, it could be on LinkedIn. So next up is about you showing your personality. So you're not just a nurse, a midwife, a student. You are a unique individual with your own interests, your own humor, your own voice. And by letting this shine through in your posts, it makes your content kind of more engaging and memorable. The most kind of engagement that I've got on my posts on Instagram is when I do what I like to call talky Instagram stories. So I just kind of show up. I kind of know what I want to talk about, but it's not scripted. It's just about what's going on and encouraging other people to get involved. And I usually get so much interaction from those kind of posts. And same goes for on LinkedIn. So I think we're in danger on LinkedIn of our feeds being full, and I'm guilty of it as well, of kind of AI generated content. But actually the times that I go to ChatGPT for a bit of help sometimes, but the times that I actually read through it, make it more me and what is the message that I want to put across to people, that's when I get the most engagement on my platforms as well. So third up on the list is about creating meaningful connections. So rather than broadcasting and just attracting attention, focus on what I think it was Catherine was saying earlier, like sparking conversations. Like Catherine, I think you were reflecting on how, I do interact with people, but I don't post myself. That's okay because you're engaging with people, you are connecting with people. You're not just broadcasting and putting stuff into the void, essentially. So you're engaging thoughtfully, you're building lasting relationships within your online communities, and that might look different on different platforms. Position yourself as an authentic voice as well. You are not just anything, you have things to say, so use your platform to share these things or to even ask questions as well. Because over time, this will help you build credibility and influence as someone whose voice is valued and respected. And then lastly, authenticity requires regular reflections as the mental health nurse. So check in with yourself about the content you're creating. Does it truly reflect your values and who you are as a professional? Because authenticity isn't static, it evolves as you grow personally and professionally. So keep reflecting and adapting your approach. And if we could move on to B, please. So the next one is biography. So this is the more practical one. So this is one of the first things that people see when they visit your profile. So it's really important to make it clear, to make it professional and reflective of who you genuinely are. So first up, and this may sound super simple, but choose a clear and memorable username. So ideally, your username should be easily identifiable as you and align with your professional identity. Now, I do know some people prefer to be anonymous online, and that's fine. There's just always some risks when it comes to like trolling and stuff like that. But I do recognize that not all people want to use their name, and that is absolutely fine as well. Next, and Gemma actually said this at the start, so I say about clearly identifying your professional role, but Nursing Now are encouraging you to share and be advocates for the Nursing Now community. So be proud of that and identify that within your bio, within your posts. Like they really want you to showcase your work and show that you're part of this community. So don't feel like you have to ask for permission to do that. It's really important that you kind of are really clear with that. Also let people know you're a healthcare professional because it immediately kind of sets expectations and helps people understand your expertise and credibility. Because it's not always other healthcare professionals that we're connecting with online. It's people from other professions, other areas as well. So be proud of the fact that, you are a nurse, you are a midwife, you are a student. Now, your bio isn't something to what I like to say is set and forget. Don't kind of set your bio and then never come back to it again. Like make sure you're regularly checking on it and updating it. So you're essentially curating your profile to reflect your current professional interests, your roles, your achievements. So consider including, specific professional affiliations, activities, or passions that resonate with your audience. And then finally on this one, if you have space, and LinkedIn's better for this because you have more room in your bio, do simple things like incorporating relevant hashtags and links to help connect with the communities and professional networks, because this boosts your visibility and engagement online. So something simple is using the right hashtags, like bigger, broader ones. When other people are searching for them, your profile then starts to come up in their search as well. So it's just an easy, well, it's a lazy way to connect with people really, because they'll probably find you, which is really, really helpful. And you can change those over time as well. So next up is C. So C is all about content. If we could move on to C, please. Thank you very much. I did say that this session isn't about creating like the next 3 months of content or anything like that, but scheduling tools can really help you maintain consistency and manage your time effectively. So when I was a student nurse, I was on social media all the time, and now I have such a better work-life balance when it comes, or work-life balance when it comes to posting online. I'm not on LinkedIn all the time. I'm not on Instagram all the time, but I do have a consistent presence. And that's because I use things that are available to me to help me spend a little bit of time thinking about what I want to put out there, but then giving myself the breathing space and headspace to just be Jess, the mum, the dog mum, the person that's, in her leggings out walking somewhere, and not being just the nurse. And you don't have to pay for these things as well, I think is important as well. I don't pay for any of my social media stuff. I do it all using the free platforms and tools that are available. Also, when it comes to content, don't forget that creativity matters. So using innovative ways to present your ideas. And it doesn't have to be innovative in the sense of like fancy and super duper professional, looks like it's been edited, blah blah blah. None of that. You don't need that. But things like short videos, engaging visuals, or thoughtful storytelling can significantly enhance your connection with your audience. And again, I am not creative at all in that sense, but I use things like Canva or Adobe to, I use templates, and that's absolutely fine, because actually the things that I'm saying, that's me. So I don't need to have, be super duper creative when it comes to the visuals. You can pinch with pride, right? And then when creating your posts, always think about sharing stories and experiences that genuinely resonate with your audience, because this will naturally foster that greater engagement and also meaningful conversations as well. So I've said it earlier, but don't be a broadcaster. Make sure that when people start commenting on your posts, like comment back, even if it's like a quick thank you, or you're liking it, like just make sure you're not just putting stuff out there and then not talking to the people in return when they take the time to engage with you as well. So if we go on to the next slide, so I just want to pause a minute and think back to the task that we set you earlier. So this is all about storytelling and using storytelling in social media, because it doesn't have to be complicated. It's simply sharing something authentic and meaningful to you, which resonates with others. So it's as straightforward as talking about your experiences, your passions, or why you're pursuing your profession. So the question we were asking you earlier was like, why are you here? So why are you here? Why are you involved in the Nursing Now Challenge? Why are you in nursing? Why are you in midwifery? And if we go on to the next slide, I'm not going to read this, but if you connect with me on Instagram, it's my pinned post. But if you don't know where to start, we would encourage you with sharing your why. And this is my why. So I had a whole career before I went into nursing, and I was on maternity leave with my youngest, and my nan passed away, and she had such good care that it made me think, what on earth am I doing with my professional life? And that was the starting point of me deciding that I wanted to go to university and become a nurse. And I've shared this on, I think, all of my platforms now. And I've had some really lovely engagement with other people, and I've got to know people. And this is probably this is a story that's similar for many people. So it's not something new, but it's personal to me, and it's me kind of showing up online as myself and letting people into a little bit into my world. So we would love to see your why posts, and it doesn't have to be as personal as this. You could do surface level, that's okay too, whatever you're comfortable with. Just we would love to see them. And if you use the hashtag leadership insights program, we will be able to find your posts, and we would love to reshare them, engage with them as well. So next slide, please. I'm gonna go on again if that's okay, Becky, because I know for the time. So the D in the A to E is your digital footprint. So this is the lasting impression you leave online. And I, as you know, and you can probably tell by now, I'm a big advocate for the use of social media, but we need to approach it with a bit of caution. So every post, every comment or share contributes to your digital identity and your digital footprint. And it can significantly impact your professional reputation, both, you know, in a great way, but also in a negative way as well. So it's always important to make sure that you consider, you know, the policies of the workplaces that you're part of your regulator, if you have one in your country. I know not everyone has a regulator, but there are, you know, certain rules that you need to follow when you're identifying as a healthcare professional online. So please do take some time to think about that. And I'm not saying don't be an activist or an advocate, because, you know, we can totally do that. But just, you know, do yourself a favor and just be aware. And if you think it's a bit archaic and it needs updating, then why not get in touch? I did that as a newly registered nurse at the first organisation in the NHS that I worked for, because it was so restrictive that they wouldn't even let us post. Well, they were just like, don't identify as working with us. And that was like, come on, you want us to be advocates for the profession. We need to change this up a bit. Anyway, I'm going off script. So it is really important to remember, as I've said, that your online content is permanent. So even posts you delete can still be retrieved, or someone could have taken a screenshot. So if it's a bit controversial, maybe put it in your drafts for a bit and come back to it later. I have done that many a time. Or you might have some, you know, critical friends, trusted peers that you might be like, oh, I'm thinking about posting this, but I'm not quite sure. So check in with them as well. But positive side of it, you can use your social media to positively raise the profile of our professions by sharing that valuable, respectful, and professional content. And by strategically using your social media platforms, it can also actively advance your career. I genuinely don't think that I would be in the posts that I've been in if I didn't have an online presence on social media. At first, I thought it was because of, you know, right place, right time. I was involved with the Royal College of Nursing's Students' Committee during COVID. A lot happened, but actually I had a professional profile online already, and I kept showing up for myself and for others. And that was what was important at the time. But just always think, would I be proud if a future employer or colleague saw this post? So the D is kind of like, it's all about raising the profile of the profession, but just approach with caution as well. And then finally, sorry, Becky, I'm talking for England here, is engage. So this is the final part of the A to E framework, and this is about how you connect with others through social media. So all of the platforms we've spoken about, they are there for building networks, for sharing ideas and being part of a wider professional conversation. And conversation is an important word, not broadcasting, conversation, engaging with people. So think of your online presence as your access point to a global network, and you are part of the Nursing Now community. That is the biggest, I don't want to say false things, but I think it is the biggest one globally. So use it, engage with people, click on the hashtags. It is really, really powerful. You know, and whether that's student nurses in Scotland, researchers in Australia, or campaigners in Canada, you're all part of the same movement. So use your platform to disseminate information, and that might be a campaign, it might be a research paper, it might be an event, it might be the recording from this session. But reshare, use the hashtags to increase your reach as well. And also what's important is to lift others up. So, you know, when you see someone from the Nursing Now community, or, you know, other networks you're involved with doing something awesome, comment on it, but also share it so that your network can see what the people that you're connected to are doing as well. Like, lift others up and bring them along with you. And yeah, just celebrate the wins, both yours and others as well. And that was a very much whistle stop tour, and I haven't left Becky a lot of time, sorry. But we do have one more section, which is about, again, a practical, so using your voice in practice. So that's the A to E, and I hope that it was helpful, and do connect with me on your preferred social media platform.
Great, thanks, Jess. Always such a great session, and it's just, I love the framework. It's really helpful when we're looking at our presence in a sometimes an unpredictable space. Might feel a little bit unsafe, and I know there was a comment around like the bad and the ugly, and like a bit of I think it was Julie talked about, I'm always waiting for the bad or the ugly, or the, you know, and it will come, because unfortunately there are people like that out there, but it's how you engage in that when it happens, I guess, is the important thing. So I will try and go through this next bit as quickly as I can, but what I've tried to do here is like bring it more, so that was very externally focused in terms of us as an individual, as a practitioner in our own right, and how we want to engage in that broader global stage that is nursing and midwifery and having that impact, etc. But let's not forget we can have an impact locally as well in our day-to-day working. So this next bit is more around how you start to use your voice in your day-to-day practice. And so I've tried here to pull some stuff together around communication and communicating with impact. And I want to start with this simple idea around communication isn't about sounding impressive. Okay, it's about being understood. Because in practice, more often than not, it's unclear communication that doesn't just confuse people, it actually delays decisions being made. It creates risk in terms of what's been understood in terms of a task, for example, what's needed, what success looks like. And it can actually weaken your voice as well when it comes to practice. So these next 10 minutes, hopefully, I'm going to help you to think about how you can communicate in a way that lands. So most communication, as I see it, doesn't fail because people don't know enough. It's never about knowing enough. It's always about not being clear enough. It's about how you've communicated. In my experience, communication is often transactional, and it's like, I've given you some information, therefore I have communicated. There's a playwright called George Bernard Shaw, and one of the things he's said is that the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it's taken place. And so there's lots really for us to think about. But what I've tried to do, because I have developed a framework called Speak, but it didn't seem to sit right here, because the Speak framework is more around getting people to speak up in that safety culture when they're concerned about something, etc. And if you're interested in that, be happy to to share that and talk about it. But this is more around your professional voice, and so I've tried to focus on that a little bit more. And so I've come up with these 3 anchoring principles, so 3 things for you to hold on to. So it's always clear over clever, structured over long. So your communication needs to be structured over long. So less is more, and it needs to be human and not robotics. That leans into what Jess just said about like less AI, more human. You're going to get people to engage with you more, and that's true not just in that social media space, but in your day-to-day working space also. So just very, very quickly, what I've tried to do is break these down. I will share these slides. I don't want to spend too much time kind of going over these things, but clarity is about reducing the effort for the person who's receiving your message. Kim Scott, another great thought leader, she talks about radical candor. It's more about feedback, but she talks about this idea that communication is received at the ear of the listener, and it doesn't happen at the mouth of the speaker, if that makes sense. So how are you ensuring that? So you need to take the noise out of it. So saying what you mean, get into the point quickly, but in a way that is human, and not sharp, etc., etc. But people need to be able to grasp your point without having to second guess, without having to have a code at hand, or interpreting what they think. And this really matters because communication is what gets us heard. Communication is what gets us understood, and therefore leads to action. Because often if we are speaking up and using our professional voice and bringing a perspective, it's because we want to see action as a result. The next one, I forgot to put my posh morphine in for those slides, but the next one is around structure. So this is about giving shape to your communication. So this is around key points, signposting. There's a simple framework called what is it that I'm communicating? Why am I communicating? And what do I want next? So kind of thinking about those things can help you to structure your communication far better. So instead of I had a reputation, I think, for saying too much. And then people didn't know what bit of that they needed to listen to. And that was one of my big points of learning around. And then I always felt left unheard and frustrated, but actually I was contributing to that sometimes. So whilst I was always like, people aren't listening to me, it's like, well, actually you're saying too much. So people didn't know what they needed to listen to. And so that's why for me now, I try to structure my communication and really think about what is the message that I want to land here. And the best example of this is when I was at first time at Congress, and there was an opportunity for me to get up and talk about psychological safety, which I'm super passionate about. And the time got less and less and less as my time came to come up onto the podium. I think I had a minute. And in that moment, I was like, what do I want to leave them with? What's the lasting thing? And the thing that came out of my mouth was, silence is not safe, speaking up is. And that's what I left. And it reverberated, that one sentence actually reverberated around that room and across Congress for the rest of the week. And the reason I know that is because people reached out to me. So actually the power of short, succinct, structured communication is not to be underestimated. And then the last one here is around human communication. So being human makes your communication feel real and relatable. So Jess talked about scripts and seeing script like AI scripts on LinkedIn and things like that. So this is about communicating as a person, and that's why it's so important then to understand your purpose, your motivation, your why, because it will better help you to communicate in a really human way. But it needs to be real, and it needs to be respectful, and it needs to be clear. And I think a lot of people think that respect is something that you earn, but fundamentally, as humans, it's a human right. Respect is a human right. Professional respect maybe is something you do earn, but respect as a human is a human right. So we should always be leading from the point of respect. And so using natural language, being direct but kind. And again, Kim Scott's work can be really helpful in terms of identifying how can we still be directly challenge something while still holding that space around being kind and around demonstrating that we care about the individual or the group of people that we might be linking in with. And people are more likely to respond to communication that feels genuine, that feels authentic, that it's going to increase trust and engagement as well. One of the other things that I wanted to focus on was what it often gets in the way of us being able to feel that we can lean into our professional voice, and particularly in healthcare. For me, I think there are three things that often shape whether we can speak up. And I haven't got time to talk about psychological safety in any way, shape, or form. I see Gemma smiling today, but this is kind of like the psychological safety is the cornerstone for some of this stuff. So one of the first things is around how people actually respond to you. That will stop you from speaking up in the future or leaning into your professional voice in the future. So actually, when we're talking about leaning into your professional voice, it's also about how you encourage others to lean into theirs as well. So we need to do that. So the way that somebody responds to your question or your concern is going to shape that next conversation that you do or you don't have. And so if someone if you hear from somebody, that's a good question, tell me what you're noticing, like that curiosity that I talked about is going to encourage your voice. If you hear, we've already covered that, just sit there and observe, it's going to shut you down, it's going to make you quieter, it's going to shrink you potentially, unless of course you're feeling particularly courageous and you challenge that particular kind of response, but one step at a time. And like I said, psychological safety is super important in this space in particular. But don't forget, like, one response can influence whether someone speaks up again. And so there's two things here. Think about how you respond to others when they speak up, but also when you're speaking up and the response you're getting from somebody else, try not to let it shut you down for that next conversation. Think about that individual that's shutting you down. One of the greatest things somebody ever said to me was Peter, actually, a very loved colleague of mine that we work very closely together. He said to me once, because somebody was, for want of a better word, winding me up, he said, what is your most compassionate interpretation of where that individual might be right now? And that just really helped me to frame what I was receiving from that individual and stop it from allowing me not to speak up in the future. The second thing is around just everyday behaviour. In terms of being a leader, I know you'll cover all of this off in broader sessions that you've got in this, but one of my biggest learnings is my leadership shows up in my micro leadership, in those micro moments, in my micro actions every single day. How I show up consistently, if I'm not showing up in a way that's consistent for me and it leads into my values, that I'm taking accountability for that and how I show up. Demonstrating that humility, acting with integrity, my tone of voice, my ability and my capacity to listen to others, acknowledging other people's contributions, whether I agree with them or not, stepping into a space of, one of the things I think we need to teach people more or help them to develop skills in is debate, is how to have conflict, productive conflict, because it is a natural part of teamwork. When you're working with lots of different people with lots of different expertise, experiences, opinions, ideas, it's natural to have conflict. So I think we often think that conflict is a bad thing. So we need to embrace conflict. But the only way that we can embrace conflict is by having psychological safety, but also having the skill set that we need to be able to have that productive dissent that often leads to better care, better outcomes, better understanding. Is really, really important. And then the last one, I think, which is probably the biggest one, is around hierarchy. We have strong hierarchy in healthcare. I think there's an even stronger hierarchy in nursing and midwifery as well. It's well recognised that there is this kind of hierarchy. And often you may find yourself in a position where you might feel lower in that hierarchy, which may mean that you feel that you can't speak up, that you can't offer a different perspective. You might start to have a little bit of imposter syndrome that leans into that, you thinking that you can't. I've certainly had that as well, even though I sit maybe a little bit higher up in the hierarchy. Not a fan of hierarchy, but I understand it. And it can make you feel that silence is safer than actually contributing a perspective. And so I just want to I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there's this idea around the hippo. So the highest paid person's opinion is always the opinion that is going to be heard. It is always going to be the opinion that it guides everything else. But in actual fact, you don't need it. You don't need to have a position of hierarchy in order to have a voice. And I think that is something that we need. Because what we're talking about here is not about you challenging that authority of that person in the room when it comes to hierarchy. This is about adding a perspective. This isn't about, which might gently challenge their perspective for sure, but this is about how you your voice adds perspective, even when the overriding narrative might be coming from somebody. The hippo. It's just a fun way of thinking about it, the highest paid person's opinion. And so sometimes the barrier to bringing your perspective isn't just hierarchy. It might be that fear of coming across in the wrong way. And actually no one wants to sound confrontational. And this is where advocacy and confrontation needs to be reframed in some ways, because what you're doing by bringing that perspective is being an advocate, whether that's being an advocate for yourself, an advocate for your patients, an advocate for nursing now, an advocate for your peers. It isn't about staying quiet, it's choosing how you speak up. And this is where structure can really help with that, because it gives you a way to advocate without escalating. And so advocacy is about sharing a perspective, keeping dignity intact. So it's not about getting into I'm not here to win this. I'm here to share a perspective. I'm not here to go up toe to toe with you. So it might be you're like, I'm a bit concerned about, could we pause and take another look at something else? Whereas confrontation can often feel like you're stepping into a challenge, you're stepping into a ring, putting the gloves on. That's going to trigger defensiveness. and the focus will often feel like it's on the person. So again, it's how you decide to communicate and how you speak. So it's not about that's wrong. That is their perspective. What you're trying to bring is an alternative perspective where you can reach a point of a shared perspective around doing the right thing. So it's less about challenging the person, and it's very much about the challenge around the problem or whatever it is that you might be looking for. And so probably an easier way to remember this is around, confrontation will almost always be that you're challenging the person. And I think that's a mindset and a narrative that we need to move away from. When I talk about having this productive dissent, these productive conversations where it's okay to have different perspectives and kind of challenge each other a little bit around it. Whereas advocacy is very much around supporting the outcome and getting to a point of doing the right thing and doing the right thing together. So yes, there is a hierarchy that exists, and yes, the loudest voice in the room can shape the room, and yes, it can feel uncomfortable to speak. But your role is not about having the perfect words, and Jess talked about being perfect earlier. It's definitely not about being perfect. Being perfect gets in the way of progress. And so sometimes we have to lean into the uncertainty and speak anyway and bring our perspective anyway. We can never be certain about anything. And we've just got to, as I forget the name of the lady, feel the fear and do it anyway, almost. And so your role isn't about having perfect words in that moment. It's about it's about staying connected to what matters, and that's the advocacy piece. So you really do not need seniority to communicate with impact. What you do need is clarity, courage, and doing it with care. And so just to bring us back to finish off, I'm going to hand back to Jess to bring us right the way back to where we started.
Thank you. So if you hadn't guessed already, what we would love you to do, so our call to action for you, your homework, if you, for want of a better word, is we would love for you to post on your preferred social media platform with your why. So why did you decide to become a nurse, a midwife, or why are you involved with the Nursing Now challenge? Please do use the hashtag as well, Leadership Insights Programme. Tag Nursing Now so those guys can see it, and we will find it if you use the hashtag. Between us, we are on most social media platforms, so we should be able to find them. And if you've never posted before, then this, could be the thing that starts getting you out there a bit more. If you're not quite there yet, that is absolutely fine, but you might want to use this as a bit of a reflective exercise as well. So, if you're not ready, that's okay. But ask yourself that question as well, and bring together a post, but keep it to yourself. That's also absolutely fine. If we go on to the next slide, because I know we are at time. But your professional brand isn't something that you have to have fully formed. We hope that's what you've got from this session today, but it is something that you are already building. So every interaction, every conversation, every time you choose to speak up or reflect, that's all part of it. It is an ongoing process, and it's really shaped by your awareness, your authenticity, how you show up online, as well as your willingness to learn, and the impact that you want to have with it as well. So don't wait until you feel ready. You can start shaping that right now, whether it's on social media or how you communicate and show up at work as well. So that's it from me.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jess, Becky. That was excellent. And brilliant slide to finish us on. Be brave, be courageous in this space. I guess there's just a couple of reflections I heard as I was listening to Jess and Becky's approach, how intentional this is. There's a huge amount of thought that's gone in and reflection that's gone into developing that sense of positioning professionally, whether that be externally through social media platforms or through our day-to-day interactions with our colleagues and people that we want to have an impact upon. And I guess probably some of us are thinking, well, where would I find the space and the time to do this? And I think that takes us back to that original point around the why. So if we want to make a difference and we want to influence change, this is an area that we can invest time and thought into, because this is our vehicle to be able to do that. And often people talk about social media as being about self-promotion, and actually when you think, for the majority of what we've heard from Jess and Becky today, it's nothing to do with self-promotion. It's about wanting to influence change and make a difference. And from what I know about our community, there's a lot that will resonate with you from those messages. And the kind of ugly side of it, I guess, is that vulnerability that we bring when we put our opinions out there into the wider world, and we leave ourselves open to others having opinions on those things, or we're questioning potentially whether we can be so controversial or we can push a boundary. And just as Jess said, just being very conscious around that, using our community as your critical friends, and looking back at our code of professional conduct to know that we're working within those boundaries provides us with the safety to be courageous and step into some of those vulnerable spaces. But today's session, as we've said with all of these, as an insight into Nursing Now Challenge development opportunities, we're hoping to develop these areas in much more depth, but we will need your evaluation in order to do that. So we want to know what you found helpful about today's session, if there are areas that you think we need to develop in more depth, and the best mechanism that we can do that amongst the community, bearing in mind we come from all different cultures, contexts, settings, and the kind of hierarchy that Becky described will be playing out quite differently depending where you're interacting with us from in the world. So thank you ever so much for joining us today. You'll receive an email with the link to today's session and also an evaluation for you to complete. And look out for all of the information through Nursing Now channels on what's up next in our Leadership Insights programme. We'll be building each session, we'll build as we go through the rest of the year. Enjoy the rest of your days. Thanks, everybody. Take care.